Welcome to Beneath the Surface, the dark side of crime. In today's story, we explore a crime so shocking and methodical that it left not just one country, but two, reeling with disbelief. A crime where the victim, a bright, kind-hearted woman, would tragically have her life cut short by a man whose twisted motives and calculated actions would elude the police for years. This is the tale of Tatsuya Ichihashi, a man who would stop at nothing to hide his identity and avoid capture, and Lindsay Hawker, the innocent woman whose life would be altered forever because of one fateful decision. This story is marked by chilling details that highlight the darkness of the human mind and the lengths one man would go to escape justice. It's a story that involves more than just the crime itself. It's a story about a hunt, a family's unrelenting search for justice, and the slow unraveling of a man's carefully constructed facade. From plastic surgery to a body hidden in a flower pot, the case of Tatsuya Ichihashi would become a nation's nightmare, one that spanned years. Buckle up as we dive deep into the tragic case of Lindsay Hawker, a young woman who came to Japan to teach, and a man who would change her life forever. Chapter 1. A Bright Future in Coventry, Lindsay. Hawker was born on December 30th, 1984, in Coventry, England, a city rich in history, but also scarred by past tragedies. In World War II, Coventry was left in ruins after a devastating bombing raid. But over time, the city rebuilt itself. Much like Coventry, Lindsay's life had been a journey of growth and resilience. Growing up in a close-knit family, Lindsay was the middle child, with two sisters, Louise and Lisa. Her parents, Bill and Julia, always encouraged their daughters to chase their dreams, no matter how big. From a young age, Lindsay stood out, not just for her intelligence, but for her warmth and kindness. She excelled in school, showing a natural aptitude for science and a genuine love for helping others. Her school years were marked by success in both academics and social circles. At King Henry VIII School, Lindsay was well liked and deeply respected by both her peers and teachers. Her passion for learning led her to pursue higher education at the University of Leeds, where she earned a degree in biology. Lindsay's academic performance was nothing short of exceptional, and by the time she graduated in 2006 with first-class honors, she was already well on her way to becoming a leader in her field. But as much as Lindsay loved science and academia, she had a strong desire to explore the world. She knew there was more to life than books and labs. There were experiences to be had, people to meet, and lessons to learn outside of the classroom. So, rather than diving straight into a master's program, Lindsay decided to take a year off and do something she had always dreamed of: travel. Her decision to teach English in Japan wasn't just about adventure. It was about growth, cultural exchange, and gaining perspective before launching into the next phase of her life. Little did she know that this decision would be the beginning of a journey that would end in tragedy. Chapter 2. A New Beginning in Japan. By October 2006, Lindsay had made her way to Japan, eager to begin her year abroad. She signed up for Nova, Japan's largest private English school, and was quickly placed in a teaching position. Nova was prestigious, attracting top talent from around the world, and Lindsay was excited to be a part of such a renowned program. She arrived in Tokyo full of hope and excitement, ready to immerse herself in the vibrant culture of Japan. Upon arrival, Lindsay was assigned to work in the Kaiwa district of Tokyo, an area that was well connected and bustling with life. Tokyo, a city known for its neon lights and busy streets, quickly became Lindsay's home. But despite the chaos of the city, Lindsay found pockets of tranquility in the many temples, gardens, and parks scattered throughout. Lindsay's first few months in Japan were filled with exploration. She visited the iconic Akihabara, a district known for its electronics and pop culture, and Asakusa, famous for the ancient Sensoji temple. She soaked in the culture, trying new foods, visiting museums, and making friends. Her free time was spent enjoying the city, meeting people from all over the world, and truly experiencing the beauty of Japan. Lindsay had also found a place to live in Chiba, a district just outside of Tokyo. The rent was cheaper, and she was able to share an apartment with 2 other teachers, both of whom worked at nearby schools. They quickly became close friends, and the 3 women bonded over shared experiences, adventures, and the challenges of living in a foreign country. Despite the excitement and new experiences, Lindsay still missed home. She was in constant contact with her family, sending updates and sharing photos of her new life in Japan. She found comfort in hearing the familiar voices of her parents and sisters, even if just for a few minutes each week. But as her time in Japan progressed, she found herself growing more attached to her new life and the people around her. But soon, in March 2007, Lindsay's peaceful existence would be interrupted by someone she hadn't yet met, the man who would change everything. Chapter 3. The first encounter with Tatsuya was a typical evening in March when Lindsay first encountered Tatsuya Ichihashi. After finishing her work for the day, she was returning home on her bike, tired but content. As she made her way through Chiba Station, she noticed a man walking toward her. He stopped just a few feet away, looked at her, and said, "You are my English teacher." Lindsay was taken aback. She didn't recognize the man, and his sudden appearance startled her. She hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to respond, but the man persisted. He told her his name was Tatsuya Ichihashi, and that he was interested in learning English. He asked if she could give him lessons, but Lindsay politely declined. She didn't remember him being one of her students, and she certainly didn't have time for private lessons outside of her regular teaching schedule. But Tatsuya didn't take no for an answer. He continued to follow her, asking questions about her background, where she was from, and what brought her to Japan. Lindsay tried to distance herself, but Tatsuya wasn't easily deterred. His pace matched hers, and before long, he was jogging after her. Lindsay's anxiety began to rise as she pedaled faster, trying to lose him in the winding streets of Chiba. But no matter how fast she went, Tatsuya kept up. Eventually, she reached her apartment complex and hoped that the man would stop following her. But he didn't. When she stopped her bike in front of the building, Tatsuya caught up with her. He introduced himself again, and despite the unsettling nature of their encounter, he made a seemingly harmless suggestion. Would she consider meeting him at a cafe to give him English lessons? He promised to pay her generously for her time. At this point, Lindsay wasn't sure how to handle the situation. Tatsuya's persistence made her uncomfortable, but she didn't want to escalate things. She politely declined again and made it clear that she had other commitments. But just before he left, Tatsuya made one last strange request. Could she give him a glass of water at her apartment? Lindsay was torn. She felt uneasy, but at the same time, she knew her two roommates were at home. She wasn't entirely alone. Perhaps this could be a chance to end the encounter on a polite note. After all, she thought, he wasn't threatening, just strange. She reluctantly agreed. Chapter 4. The agreement to teach Tatsuya entered Lindsay's apartment, and for a moment, the unease Lindsay had been feeling seemed to subside. She offered him a glass of water, and they sat down, talking briefly. But the conversation was awkward, and Lindsay could tell that Tatsuya was not about to leave anytime soon. He continued to suggest that she teach him English, offering to pay her 3,500 yen per hour. Though it felt uncomfortable, the extra money could help her out. Lindsay agreed to give him a lesson a few days later, hoping the meeting would be short and professional. Tatsuya thanked her profusely and, as he was leaving, handed her a sketch he had drawn. It was a picture of her, drawn in quick strokes, and it seemed almost too intimate for someone she had just met. On the back, he wrote his name and phone number, a gesture that sent a chill down Lindsay's spine. Despite her discomfort, Lindsay accepted the sketch. She didn't want to seem rude, and perhaps he would take the hint after the lesson. But as the days passed, Lindsay couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Chapter 5. The Fateful Meeting. A few days later, Lindsay and Tatsuya met at the coffee shop. As agreed, Lindsay was feeling increasingly uneasy, but she tried to remain professional. She arrived early, settling at a small table near the window, hoping that the public setting would keep things neutral. When Tatsuya arrived, he seemed more nervous than before, his eyes darting around as he sat across from her. Lindsay noticed that, although Tatsuya was trying to seem polite, there was something off about his behavior. He kept leaning in closer than was necessary, invading her personal space. She instinctively pulled back, adjusting her seat to keep a safe distance between them. Every time he moved a little too close, she'd take a step back, subtly trying to create some physical space. They talked for over an hour. Tatsuya seemed to have little interest in learning English for the sake of self-improvement. Instead, his questions were more about Lindsay herself, where she was from, what she liked to do in her free time, and how long she had been in Japan. He spoke obsessively about his own life, almost to the point where Lindsay could no longer tell if he was interested in learning English or simply learning more about her. Despite the discomfort, Lindsay tried to stay focused. At the end of the lesson, Tatsuya awkwardly pointed out that he had forgotten his money. "No worries," he said. "I live just a few minutes down the road. You could come by and grab it." Lindsay wasn't thrilled with the suggestion, but felt trapped. She had agreed to this lesson, and now it felt too late to back out. The idea of taking a taxi to his apartment was uncomfortable, but she rationalized it. She was in public. She would only be there briefly, and the taxi driver would wait outside. The ride to Tatsuya's apartment was uneventful, but as they neared the building, Lindsay's discomfort grew. She had already taken mental notes. She had texted her roommates earlier about where she was going. She had the taxi driver's contact information, and she kept her phone within easy reach. Little did she know that these safety precautions would not be enough to protect her from what was about to unfold. Chapter 6. The Disappearance. Upon arriving at Tatsuya's apartment, Lindsay was more on edge than ever. The building was old, its walls thin and cracked, and the dimly lit hallway didn't offer any reassurance. Tatsuya led her upstairs with a quick pace, not offering much in the way of conversation. He opened the door to his apartment, and Lindsay hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. She immediately felt the weight of the room. It was sparse, clinical even, with very little decoration. Tatsuya's demeanor seemed calm, but there was something unsettling about the way he held himself. He moved quickly, grabbing his wallet and then offering to let her sit down while he fetched the money. Lindsay, trying to make small talk, sat on the couch. She nervously checked her watch. It had been longer than she had expected. She reminded herself that she had work later that afternoon. Her discomfort turned to frustration, but she wasn't in a position to leave yet. Tatsuya reappeared with a small stack of cash, but instead of handing it over, he placed it on the table between them. She reached out, but he quickly pulled the money back. "I just have one more question," Tatsuya said. His voice was flat, detached. Lindsay raised an eyebrow, her discomfort growing. "What's that?" He asked her if she would agree to continue teaching him English, this time, more privately, at his apartment. But Lindsay had already made it clear that her schedule was packed, and she wasn't interested in spending more time with him. Tatsuya didn't take her refusal well. There was an edge to his tone now, an undercurrent of something darker. But Lindsay stood up, ready to leave, politely but firmly refusing his request. Tatsuya didn't argue. Instead, he asked her for one last favor. Would she mind providing him with a glass of water? It seemed so innocuous, but Lindsay hesitated. She couldn't help but feel a chill at the idea of being alone with him, but there was safety in numbers. Her two roommates were at home, and she wasn't entirely alone. She agreed, but as she walked toward the kitchen, her mind raced. Something felt off about this encounter. She had already said no to his previous requests. Why was he pushing so hard now? As she returned with the glass of water, Lindsay couldn't shake the nagging feeling that her politeness might cost her more than she was willing to give. Chapter 7. The Search for Tatsuya. By the time the police were alerted to Lindsay's disappearance, her roommates had already begun to feel the weight of the unknown. They knew something was wrong the moment Lindsay failed to return from her meeting with Tatsuya. The hours dragged on with no word from her, and their calls to her phone went unanswered. By the time they realized she hadn't shown up for work, the sinking feeling of dread had settled over them. The authorities were quick to begin their investigation. Knowing that Tatsuya was the last person seen with Lindsay, the police immediately turned their focus on him. They combed through her phone records and messages, questioning her roommates, trying to piece together the moments before she vanished. They knew that every detail, no matter how small, could be critical in locating her. As the investigation unfolded, something odd emerged. Lindsay's roommates recalled that she had mentioned a drawing Tatsuya had given her, a crude sketch of herself with his name and phone number scrawled on the back. This wasn't just a simple gesture. It felt like an odd and intimate act that could point to a man obsessed with her. Police immediately began to treat it as a potential lead, asking everyone they could about Tatsuya's background. With nothing left to do but wait for leads to emerge, the investigation intensified. The media caught wind of the story, and Lindsay's disappearance was reported on TV, radio, and in newspapers across Japan. Flyers were put up bearing Tatsuya's photo and the eerie details of the case. The media, hungry for information, began speculating about Tatsuya's possible motives, painting him as a sinister figure who had orchestrated a carefully calculated crime. Meanwhile, Lindsay's family back in the United Kingdom remained in a state of disbelief. Bill and Julia Hawker had received a call about their daughter's disappearance, and their world came crashing down in an instant. The fear of not knowing what had happened to her overwhelmed them. They immediately began making arrangements to travel to Japan to help with the search for their daughter. Their frustration mounted as the days passed without answers. Each minute that went by without finding Lindsay felt like an eternity. But as days turned to weeks and weeks turned to months, the hunt for Tatsuya became more desperate. It was clear that Lindsay's case had struck a deep chord with the Japanese public, but even with the media's attention and police efforts, Tatsuya remained elusive, his whereabouts unknown. Chapter 8: A Gruesome Discovery. It was late one evening when the breakthrough came. The police had been investigating every possible lead, but none seemed to lead them to Tatsuya. They searched his apartment building and spoke to neighbors, but they still couldn't pinpoint his exact location. It wasn't until they received an anonymous tip that they were given their first real lead. Upon arriving at Tatsuya's apartment, the police immediately noticed something strange. The apartment was eerily still, and there was an unsettling lack of life in the building. The usual buzz of activity in the neighborhood had faded into an ominous silence. As officers knocked on Tatsuya's door with no response, a neighbor offered to help. They peered through the balcony window into the apartment and immediately saw something that set their nerves on edge. The bathtub, usually kept in the bathroom, had been moved to the balcony. It was a bizarre act that defied logic, and it sent a wave of unease through the police officers. Fearing that Lindsay could be inside, trapped or injured, the police decided to take swift action. They called for backup and prepared to break down the door. They weren't sure what they would find, but they were certain it wasn't going to be good. When they finally forced the door open, they were met with a scene that would haunt them for the rest of their careers. Lindsay's body was discovered inside the bathtub, buried under a mound of sand and soil. The bathtub had been meticulously arranged to disguise it as a flower bed. Flower seeds were planted on top, and decomposing agents were added to speed up the process of decay. Only Lindsay's right hand was visible above the soil, a haunting image that sent a chill down the spines of the officers who uncovered it. The grotesque nature of the crime was compounded by the fact that Lindsay had been bound and gagged. Bruises covered her body, signs of a prolonged assault that revealed the true horror of what had transpired. The discovery of Lindsay's body was a heartbreaking moment, but it also provided crucial evidence. The scene suggested that Tatsuya had meticulously planned the disposal of her body, taking great care to hide it in plain sight. The use of the flower bed as a cover-up was not just a grotesque act of concealment. It was a chilling statement of how far Tatsuya was willing to go to avoid detection. But perhaps the most disturbing detail was that Lindsay's hair had been shaved off. Wigs were found in Tatsuya's apartment, leading to widespread speculation that he might have killed her for the sole purpose of using her hair as part of a cross-dressing disguise. It was a shocking turn in the case, and the police realized that they were dealing with a deeply disturbed individual, one whose actions went beyond a simple act of violence. Chapter 9: The Manhunt Begins. Tatsuya. Ichihashi's disappearance after Lindsay's death sparked one of the most intense manhunts in Japanese history. Posters of his face were plastered across the country, and news outlets covered the story relentlessly. The Japanese police, determined to bring him to justice, were joined by a team of British investigators who had flown to Japan to help with the search. Despite the massive effort to find him, Tatsuya proved to be a master of evasion. He had planned his disappearance meticulously, using every trick in the book to remain undetected. It wasn't long before authorities realized that Tatsuya wasn't just hiding in plain sight. He had become a ghost, moving between cities, changing his appearance, and erasing any trace of himself. For months, the manhunt dragged on with no significant leads. Tatsuya's face became known to millions across Japan, but despite the constant media coverage, no one had seen him. The police's frustration grew as the months passed. Each lead seemed to go nowhere. Every time they thought they were close to capturing him, Tatsuya would vanish once again. In the midst of this, Lindsay's family, unwilling to let their daughter's death be in vain, joined the search in earnest. Bill and Julia traveled to Japan, determined to find Lindsay's killer. They met with law enforcement and even sought help from the Yakuza, Japan's infamous mafia, in a desperate attempt to bring Tatsuya to justice. Their determination became an inspiration for the police, who realized that Lindsay's family would not stop until Tatsuya was found. The mounting pressure on the police became palpable. Not only were they dealing with a highly publicized case, but they also faced a growing sense of shame. How had they allowed a killer to slip through their fingers for so long? Chapter 10. The Final Capture. After years of evading capture, Tatsuya Ichihashi's luck finally ran out in 2009. It came down to a single, crucial mistake. A plastic surgeon who had performed surgery on Tatsuya recognized him from the photos released by the police. The surgeon had altered Tatsuya's appearance in an attempt to help him escape detection, but it was this very act that led to his undoing. The surgeon contacted the police, and they were able to verify the information. The breakthrough came at a critical moment, as Tatsuya had been trying to flee Japan yet again. In November 2009, he made his way to a ferry port in Osaka, hoping to escape to another island. But as fate would have it, a worker at the port recognized him from the police photos. The authorities were alerted, and Tatsuya was arrested shortly thereafter. Tatsuya's capture brought an end to the years-long search. The police, as well as Lindsay's family, were finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. But while the physical pursuit of Tatsuya had ended, the emotional toll on Lindsay's family was far from over. Yet despite it all, they had never stopped fighting for Lindsay. The media's portrayal of the case had added another layer of intensity to the already difficult ordeal. The public's fascination with the crime, combined with the ever-growing media frenzy, made it hard for the family to focus on anything other than the constant reminder of what they had lost. Still, the Hawker family pressed on, determined to ensure that their daughter's story was not buried in the shadows, lost to the headlines. They had to fight to keep her memory alive. In a final act of defiance against the senselessness of Lindsay's death, her parents, Bill and Julia, traveled to Japan. They made it their mission to speak to everyone they could, local officials, the police, and even members of the Yakuza, to ensure that no stone was left unturned in their quest for justice. It was a remarkable journey, one that would forever change the course of their lives. They would never forget the faces of the people they met, nor the overwhelming weight of their daughter's absence. Yet despite their grief, they pressed on, determined to see the case to its tragic conclusion. When Tatsuya was finally captured, it wasn't just the police who breathed a sigh of relief. It was the entire nation of Japan. His name had been on wanted posters, his face flashed across television screens, and his disappearance had become a symbol of the failure to bring a man to justice. But his capture also highlighted the shortcomings of the system, a system that had allowed this man to evade the law for so long. It was a glaring reminder of how a single individual's willful manipulation of the system could turn a family's worst nightmare into a prolonged battle. Though Tatsuya was caught, the Hawker family knew that justice in the courtroom could never truly heal the wound left in their hearts. Lindsay's death had torn through their lives like a wrecking ball, leaving behind a trail of broken dreams and shattered hearts. Justice was important, but it could not replace what they had lost. No matter the outcome of Tatsuya's trial or sentence, the void left by Lindsay's absence would never be filled. Lindsay Hawker's life was more than the tragic end it met in 2007. She was a bright young woman, filled with promise, ambition, and a love for life. She had a future ahead of her, one that was stolen by a man who saw her as nothing more than a means to fulfill his twisted desires. But what Tatsuya Ichihashi could not take from Lindsay was the impact she had on those around her, the lives she touched, and the memories she left behind. Lindsay Hawker was loved deeply by her family, her friends, and the people who were fortunate enough to know her. Though her life was tragically cut short, her story did not end in silence. It echoed across the globe, capturing the attention of millions. Her story became one of both sorrow and strength, a story of a family's unrelenting search for justice and their refusal to let their daughter's memory fade into the background. Lindsay's parents, Bill and Julia, will forever carry the weight of that loss. They will never stop fighting for her, and they will continue to honor her memory in every way they can. Their determination to ensure that Lindsay was remembered as more than just a victim, but as a loving, compassionate, and vibrant young woman speaks to the incredible resilience of the human spirit. In the end, justice was served, but the cost was high. Lindsay's death left a hole that nothing could ever fill, but her story serves as a powerful reminder that even in the face of darkness, there is light. Even in the aftermath of tragedy, there is hope. Lindsay's legacy is not one of death and loss, but of love, compassion, and the importance of standing up for what is right. The pain of losing her will never go away, but her family has found solace in knowing that her story was not forgotten. Tatsuya Ichihashi's capture may have closed one chapter, but Lindsay's story lives on in the hearts of all who remember her. And while her killer may have been caught, and while justice was served in the courtroom, Lindsay's family knows that there will always be unanswered questions, lingering memories, and a longing that will never subside. They have fought for justice, but they will forever miss the woman that Lindsay was, and the life she had yet to live. Her story, painful as it is, serves as a reminder to the world that we cannot allow injustice to go unchallenged. It serves as a testament to the strength of those who love us and the indomitable will of a family that would never give up. In Lindsay's memory, we are reminded of the importance of kindness, of love, and of never giving up, even in the darkest of times. The arrest of Tatsuya Ichihashi brought a bittersweet sense of closure for Lindsay Hawker's family. After years of searching, questioning, and hoping for justice, the nightmare had finally come to an end. But as the police closed the case and the court rendered its verdict, the Hawker family was left with a painful truth. They would never see Lindsay again. Justice had been served, but the void left in their lives could never be filled. Lindsay was more than a victim. She was a young woman with a bright future, full of love, dreams, and potential. Her life was tragically stolen by a man whose twisted obsession led to her untimely death. While Tatsuya Ichihashi's capture may have brought some relief, it can never erase the heartbreak of a family who lost their daughter in the most horrific way imaginable. Lindsay's memory will live on, not only in the hearts of those who loved her, but in the countless people who have heard her story. Her parents' tireless fight for justice, their refusal to give up on their daughter's memory, will forever be an inspiration. Even in the darkest of times, they proved that love and resilience can triumph over the deepest grief. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey through the tragic case of Lindsay Hawker. We hope this story has resonated with you, reminding us all of the importance of justice, love, and never giving up, no matter how difficult the path may seem. If you found this story impactful, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Beneath the Surface, the dark side of crime, for more stories like this. Your support helps us continue to share powerful, thought-provoking stories that bring awareness to the darker corners of the world. We encourage you to share your thoughts and comments below. What do you think about this case? What lessons can we learn from Lindsay's story? Your voice matters, and together we can keep the conversation going. Until next time, take care of each other. Stay safe, and always look beneath the surface.